Africans, as we are moving forward, whatever circumstance, like the circumstance we find ourselves there, we should always remember that it's all economic. Now, today we're basically discussing agriculture and food security. Agriculture and food security. And this is a big thing because the situation of the world today, is one in which there is a lot of anticipation. There is evidence that there's going to be a food shortage. There's going to be food insecurity in the months to come, in the years to come. And it is interesting to really know that Africa imports food which is valued up to about $35 billion. That's a lot. And this estimate is expected to actually rise to about $110 billion by 2025. 2025, we are already in 2020. And this is, as the Romans say, ceteris paribus. This is when all things were supposed to be the same. Nothing was supposed to change. But we realize here that not just some things have changed, but like everything has changed. And we expect that it's even going to be probably in May if we don't act. And that's the reason why we're calling for action. And that's the reason why we are acting now. If we don't act, let me repeat this. Actually, Africa imports about $35 billion of food. And this is supposed to increase by to 110 by 2025, $110 billion. And that is when all things were expected to be the same. Like nothing changed when that estimate was made. But not just some things have changed, but everything has changed. And everything changing means here that a lot is expected. There's going to be a lot of food deficit. Now, what this means actually is we need to sit up, and of course, we need to start working very hard to feed our people. As Africans, we all need to sit up and see what we can do in order to be able to feed our people in the years as they approach very fast, even in the months ahead and in the years, of course, approaching, because such quantity of import is very, very high. And this shows that the African economy is very weak. It shows how weak the African economy actually looks. But we're not going to stay there lamenting, but we're going to say it also shows that there is huge opportunity available for job creation through investments in agriculture, agro-processing, and renewable energy. It actually shows to us because we know that, yes, there's going to be food deficit. Good, there's going to be food deficit. It's not a good thing, but then it also tells us that there is a huge possibility if we go into agriculture, if we start to develop our agricultural sector, if we go into agro-processing, if we encourage a little more farmers and process the food that is produced, and of course, enhance and use renewable energy, the market is available. That is what it also tells us. This import of 35 billion is the same amount, ironically, is the same amount that is required to close the energy gap, which tells you that there is also a huge gap when it comes to energy provision. And that is the reason why we have always talked on this platform. We've always talked about agro-processing, agriculture, agro-processing, and renewable energy, because these are things that should work together. Because when we're developing agro-processing technologies, when we are developing agro-processing initiatives, we always try as much as possible to associate it with a renewable form of energy, so that this renewable form of energy can also be able to power the systems. Now, Democratic Republic of Congo alone can feed 2 billion people, And that is all of China and some of its neighbors, as a matter of fact. Just imagine the size of Democratic Republic of Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo alone can feed 2 billion people. The population of China is about 1.3 or so billion people. It means that this Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC alone, can feed China plus some of its neighbors. And China is about 4 times. I want to talk about land surface area. China is about 4 times bigger, larger than the Democratic Republic of Congo. So if that is a possibility, this at least should give us a mental picture of the possibilities that are available in Africa. Like I indicated much earlier, about 60% of the arable land. Arable land means the land that is possible to carry out farming on. It's available on the African soil. Ironically, too, we have a great youthful population. So our problem is neither the labor nor is it the land. So we have all that is available. So all we need to do is to change our mindsets and to get to work. So the time has come for Africans to go back to the roots and try to see how we can be able to reboot the continent. Now, let us not waste a lot of time actually lamenting, because one thing which is clear is that it is important to accept the fact that science and medicines that were supposed to serve humanity is evidently being manipulated. Now, all these things I'm trying to put forth here is important, because we need to begin to give ourselves a reason why we must get together as Africans and fight for the interest of Africa. We must, because everything across the globe is designed against Africa. It's funny because everything across the globe is designed, if you go into the depth, if you go behind everything, somehow it is designed against Africa. But there's always this front image which seems as though it is to help. Africa does not need help. That is one thing that should go into the minds of all Westerners. Africa does not need help. If there is anything that Africa needs, is to be let alone. It is only just to be let alone. Just leave Africa alone. Now, we're not going to continue to say that, because we know that they know it and they are not done yet with the tricks. So what we're going to do is that we're trying as much as possible to mobilize our people in order for us to create some of these initiatives as we were talking and going. Now, the situation of food security in Africa is evidence of the intention of this evil intent of gradual extinction of our cultural heritage, the African heritage. The African heritage. So food in Africa is much more than just biology. Food in Africa is much more than just biology. Sometimes it's really funny to me when I sit and see someone probably sitting in the US or probably someone sitting somewhere in China and looking at Africans and preaching to Africans about clean and nutritious food while the person is busy eating poisonous, genetically modified food. It really sometimes baffles me how people really think that simply because African is in Africa, it means that the food is dirty. I think they should probably start by defining what dirty actually means. Because if somebody is busy eating genetically modified food, poisonous genetically modified food, and looking at somebody else eating organic food and still have the mindset of telling that person that he's eating something dirty, then the world really got a problem bigger than what we thought. Now, the fact is, Africans must understand that it is high time for us to invest in agriculture, agro-processing, and renewable energy. It's not just a matter of food security, but it's also a matter of our existence, protecting survival of the Black race. Because we have evidently seen that there's just so many counts of evidence that we've seen how they've always been intentions using some of these tactics in order to kill Africans unnecessarily for just no good reason. Science over the years has been used to deceive, manipulate, and extort money from Africans in millions of ways, including genetically modified plants, with claims of certain magical powers and stuff like that, fake concoctions that go along with the claims of weight loss and stuff like that. All those things are masterminded in the West. You have people who carry on, who buy devices that are supposed to measure certain quantities, but those devices actually don't even measure those quantities, sexual abilities and stuff, all those kind of things. They all exploit African minds, So amongst all these dirty technologies out there, we have one thing that it's usually referred to as a RNA interference. RNA interference RNA interference, or basically speaking, gene silencing. And I just mentioned this because it's pretty important. And I want to let Africans get to realize that there's a lot out there when it comes to food and agriculture. There's a lot out there that Africans need to know in order to take some of these decisions, in order to get back home, and in order to get back to agriculture and reboot the continent. This RNA or gene silencing technology, to put it simple, this technology has the potential to manipulate the food chemistry. It can be used to manipulate food chemistry so that it can cause harm. It can kill a selected race, like Black people. It could be manipulated so that only Black people who eat it should die or should have certain conditions. If they don't want to kill you like now, they're going to induce certain conditions in you. For example, they could induce anything, from diabetes to all the deadly stuff you can ever think of. So they can induce that in you. With this knowledge and with the fact that with the experience that Africans have had in the past, what makes you think that they cannot do that? Of course, this gene silencing technology is not all bad. Of course, this is a technology that can be used to cure genetic diseases or some autoimmune diseases. It can be used to control or it can be used to cure those diseases. It's quite good. Even in plants, it can be used for pest control because you can be able to adjust the chemistry of the plants in such a way that when the pests eat the plant, the pest will die. So that same technology can be used to play with the chemistry of the plant in such a way that when the black man eats it, the black man is going to die. It's a weapon. It's a weapon, and over the years, we know that a lot of things have been used as weapons against Black people. So what convinces us that this one may not be used? So I think that this is something that Africans must put into their minds and realize that it's sufficient. We have sufficient reason. We have sufficient reason why we should get together, and we should be able to put our own initiatives together, and of course, develop ourselves when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to agro-processing, and of course, renewable energy. Now, what exactly are we doing? Because it looks as though we've probably been talking too much. But what exactly are we doing? Now, the Pan-African Agro Club has been formed. The Pan-African Agro Club, let me take this opportunity to make everybody get to know that, all Africans get to know that. The Pan-African Agro Club has been formed. And we're building a number of micro-farming, agro-processes, and renewable energy initiatives across different climatic regions of Africa. The Pan-African Agro Club is made of Africans who design and contextualize. We design and contextualize machines for sustainable solutions in Africa. So we design several different types of machines especially for agriculture, agro-processing, and renewable energies in order to address the root issues, the core issues, the core challenges in Africa. Some of these machines, of course, are all there, but some of them are not designed with Africa in mind. Trust us on that. Most of those machines are not designed with Africa in mind. So what we do is that we actually contextualize some of these machines, we design some, and then we're able to build lines for either processing and for other solution applications back in Africa. So while we're also contextualizing some of these machines, we also try as much as possible to see that, to push for the building of machines on the African soil, for the building of some of these machines on the African soil. So most people think maybe Chinese are the ones that build most of those machines that they see them using out there. Well, that's not exactly true, because you'll be very surprised. There are lots and lots of Africans in the background working on some of those machines. There are lots and lots of, you have some of them from India, some of those machines are from Korea, some of them, of course, are cloned machines from Japan, Europe, and of course from Africa. some people may be surprised that we talk about machines, Chinese people copying machines from Africa. There are lots and lots of machines that are mass produced by Chinese, but that are designed in Africa, simply because some of these welders, there are lots of welders in Africa who design a lot of machines, build them in maybe 1 or 2 quantities, and then the Chinese people will come and pick the technology up and mass produce, because the strength of a Chinese is mass production. So, and that's what they do. So what we're trying to do is that while we also struggle to contextualize machines and address African challenges, what we also do is we try to push for the building of some of these machines on the African soil. That's what we continue to do. Therefore, the Pan-African Club is meant for Africans who are actually willing. We invite Africans who are actually willing to invest in these available technologies and these initiatives and ideas and make profit while also making the lives of their communities better. So that is what the Pan-African Agro Club does, and we also actually making sure that we centering our energy, our strength on the communities, because we realize that it is working with the communities that we can actually build the strength of Africa, because the strength of Africa lies in the people of Africa, the people that make Africa, the communities that have been weakened by the dependence on politicians, by the dependence on politics. But when we reduce, the only way we can reduce the dependence of our communities and empower our communities is by strengthening the agricultural sector, because that is where they can actually engage the population and the people. So we're also struggling as much as possible to look at the possibility of mobilizing and helping farmers financially and, of course, technically, to see into either the improved production, because when production is improved, what's going to happen is that we can also have more to process, and of course, more which is made available and for a long time. Because sometimes what usually happens is some communities do not suffer from food shortages because there are no foods coming from the farms, but simply because the foods that come from the farms get rot in the markets. It stays in the markets, and because of lack of some of those processing ways in which we can be able to keep them, to store them for a long time, they get rotten in the markets. So one thing which we've also observed is that particular type of formula where a community will sit down and wait for a government to produce a solution or to produce a certain power source or energy source, that system is not successful. It has failed. It has failed because it pushes our governments in Africa to go into loans they cannot pay back. When we sit down and say, okay, we're waiting for the government to set up a dam or something, an energy source for the whole nation, it has failed. Why not decentralize the energy and let these communities begin to produce their energy alongside their agricultural processing factories? If we can be able to start implementing the decentralized format of energy distribution in Africa, we're going to solve the problems. We can start taking that progressively from where there's more availability to where there's least availability. But if we have to sit down and wait and say that there's going to be a huge project that's going to be installed somewhere in a place called a capital, and then it's going to serve all the people in that nation, it's going to push the politicians to go for loans the people cannot pay back. So that format where the population or the communities sit down and wait for the politicians to mobilize funds by borrowing loans, it's outdated. It's failed. So we have to shift away from that. So we have to now start encouraging the communities. And that is what the Pan-African Agro Club is doing. We're encouraging the communities. We're working with the communities. We are providing the technical know-how to the communities to start setting up their own energy source where they're going to have their electricity, so that these communities can begin to power their ideas, to power their initiatives, to power their processing factories, to power their lives, and of course have better life. Typical example is that of a biogas, we set up quite a couple of biogas systems across Africa. We let's look at just the example of Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is setting up the biggest. It's supposed to be the biggest, the largest biogas plant now, but surprisingly, more than 75% of that biogas plant belongs to French companies. But it's worse than the situation in Kenya, like I indicated much earlier when I had the other presentation. The Kenyans have set up one. The companies are owned by Kenyans. So, but the Ivorians are setting up a biogas plant, and 75% of that biogas plant belongs to French companies. Can somebody explain to me for a moment how a biogas plant in Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire will belong to a French company? The organic material that is put inside the biogas is coming from Cote d'Ivoire. It's coming from the neighborhood, the community. It's coming from the people. So how is it just the construction of the infrastructure? So those are the things that are really regrettable. So those are things that we begin to look at and we say, no, it makes no sense. Africans should begin to work by community. Each community should be able to have a biogas plant or a windmill or windmill farm or a solar farm. Each community should be able to have that, because when the communities have such investment in their communities, they're gonna have a better life. Of course, the people are gonna have a better life. So some groups and of course and individuals in the diaspora have contacted the Pan-African Agro Club, and we're inviting, of course, every African to belong to this Pan-African Agro Club. And of course, so these groups that have been able to contact us, we're working with them. We're actually already doing a lot of work on the ground with them. We already working on the various projects that they have selected. And these projects that they have selected, of course, it ranges. Now, let's take a typical situation of the various markets. Let's look at the markets that we have in Africa. There are a lot of countries in Africa. We have a lot of markets. If you go to the markets, we have a lot of waste, especially the food markets. You have a lot of waste accumulated there. Those are waste that we could be able to set up biogas plants around the markets, even set up toilets at the markets, convert the organic waste and the waste from the plant waste from the market, convert that into energy, combining with animal waste and stuff like that. So you realize that at the end of the day, such plants can be able to not just power the market, but also provide manure for the farms and stuff like that. You know, we also converting urine into fertilizer and stuff like that. So there's a lot of resources that we can get just by being able to understand and understand the advantages that we'll have if we prioritize this agro-processing and renewable energy format to develop our communities. So these technologies we're talking about are not super technologies. These are basic, straightforward technologies that we just need to come together, organize ourselves in teams or groups, and see how we can invest our finance, our energy into these projects. So we actually collaborating with we have some estate developers. We also collaborating with some universities and of course some schools to set up biogas plants. We cannot build. Most estate developers in Africa are building horizontally and wasting a lot of land. Why? Simply because they don't have power to power the lifts that will be going up and down. But what if you do that in a school, for example, you have lots of students in the building, there's a lot of organic waste. Why don't you put that in a biogas system and power even a refectory where the students go and eat, the kitchen, power even electricity and stuff like that. So our way of thinking, our way of looking at things, that is what we're changing right now, and we're coming up with these projects, and we're working on some of these projects. So we're collaborating with estate developers, we're collaborating with schools, universities to set up some of these projects currently. So we working not just with biogas. Of course, we have wind. There are, depending on the geography of the place, we can either set up a windmill that could equally provide electricity, or we set up solar farms. You know, we can also set up solar farms depending on the place.